Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Welcome to Financial Issues. It is Wednesday morning, June 26th of 2024, and we're so glad that you joined us today to hear about the financial issues of the world. Maybe some things that you're hearing about, maybe some things that you're dealing with, and maybe some things that you're struggling with, some financial issues that you have. So we hope that we can help shed some light on those things, and we can encourage you to be a biblically responsible investor. We also want to encourage you to make sure that you have access to the full show, because we're going to hear from Joel Noble with Samaritan Ministries later in the show, and he's going to share with us some wisdom about how we can be good stewards financially and from a healthcare perspective in what we can do in that area of our life with the way that we handle our healthcare needs. So don't want to spoil it for us. We'll get to that later in the show. But if you haven't partnered with us, please consider doing so today. For just $132 a year, you can partner with this ministry, you can support the work that we're doing, and you can get access to our biblically responsible investment strategy. Our stewardship verse today comes from Proverbs 4:6. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom, and whatever you get insight. Seth, what do you think?
That's good, Shana. You know, I would, if I were a betting man, which I'm not, we don't promote betting on this show, obviously, but if I were, I would wager a bet to say that we probably talk about wisdom most often on the show, with the one exception of stewardship. It's probably stewardship and then wisdom. Wisdom is one that we come back to often. And it's a far greater value, Shana, than any treasure that we can collect. Indeed, it's a gift of God. And it's a vital tool for the biblically responsible investor. My belief is that every single successful biblically responsible investor is also a wise person, whether they're old or young. They also have used the wisdom. They've asked for wisdom from God, and now they're using that wisdom. So the first step in this process, Shana, in wisely choosing to partner with FISM and trying to use wisdom through the whole thing, is picking the right asset allocation model.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, well, wisdom is really different from information.
Yeah.
There's no lack of information out there. In fact, if you listen to financial news for any length of time, I would be willing to bet in the first 10 minutes, you're going to hear something about AI, artificial intelligence.
Especially today. Yeah.
Yes. So the goal of AI is to organize all the information out there to generate wisdom. But true wisdom really only comes from one source. So sometimes we'll get asked, what about following an AI-generated investment strategy? Well, that just presumes that artificial intelligence has some kind of wisdom that we as human beings can't tap into. And I would suggest that that's just stinking thinking. True wisdom comes only from one source, and that's from God. So we should seek wisdom and insight in all that we do.
Amen. And it's so valuable, Shana. It really is. I mean, it brings to mind, Solomon asked for wisdom, and God was so pleased with Solomon asking for something of such value that he gave him the things he didn't ask for, the riches and the wealth and success. Not AI, thankfully. That would be a curse. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
He gave him the true intelligence, better than artificial intelligence is intelligence from God.
Yeah. I think, AI is that counterfeit. I think it's Satan's attempt at a counterfeit.
It is. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Shana, for today's teachable moment, kind of in this vein, is kind of that first step, as we talked about, choosing the right asset allocation model. So I'll just hand it to you and ask, for our new partners, what are the asset allocation models that we offer? How do they become familiar with this if they're new to it?
So first, you just log into the partner side of the website, and then we have different asset allocation models that you can choose from. And the asset allocation model really is sort of a blueprint for your portfolio. So it breaks down the different sectors. It looks sort of like a pie chart, and it has the different sectors that we recommend for each of the different asset allocation models. And it tells you as a percentage what part of your portfolio should be designated or allocated to the different sectors, like what percentage of your portfolio should be in energy, what percentage should be in international, what should be in fixed income, so on and so forth. So it gives all of the sectors, and it gives a breakdown, and it gives a pie chart. So it's really easy to look at.
Yeah. And Shana, is it right to say that the asset allocation model is not your diversification, but it's reflective of how diversified you are? Is that true?
Yeah, so asset allocation is a principle of diversification. Diversification says don't have all your eggs in one basket. So, if you think that that energy is going to do really well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. At some point in the business cycle, I'm sure it will. But you don't want to concentrate all of your investable assets in energy. Now, if you had done that in 2022, you would have turned out to be really right. But, in other years, you would have been really wrong. Yeah. So, we recommend a way to reduce risk in your portfolio is to have diversification, and asset allocation is just the practical way you divide up your assets between the different sectors and asset classes.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. And I know for people who are joining for the first time, they might log in, they'll click the asset allocation model button, and they'll see several different options, actually 3 different ones. So we got the regular investment model, the Timothy model, and then the TSP model. What's the difference between these 3 models, Shana, and how do we kind of understand how they're maybe similar and how they're also different?
Yep. So my favorite is the investment model. That is where you're just going to be building your own portfolio. It really encourages you. It gives you enough information about the different companies that are on our buy list, so that you can really have a concrete idea of what you're invested in. If you're just invested in an index or a mutual fund that you don't know anything about, you don't really have a great idea of why it moves either up or down. When you invest in individual companies, you're really getting an idea of what you're invested in. So you can know how long the company's been in business. You can know who is managing the company. You can know what kind of profit they're making, what kind of cash they have. You can listen to the shareholder press conferences or conference calls once a quarter. You can hear from management about what's going on with the company. You can read news that relates to the company. So it really helps you understand what you have, and it's not just some arbitrary thing. And now it does involve a little bit more hands-on experience. If you don't feel like you have the time or the expertise to actually do that, and the whole idea of listening to a shareholder conference call really bores your socks off, then you can do something a little bit more hands-off. You can use a trusted company like the Timothy Plan. They're a mutual fund company, the pioneer with biblically responsible investing, and you can use their mutual funds that are screened for biblically responsible activity, so you can be sure that you're not investing in anything that goes against your moral convictions. And you can use the funds and the ETFs to build your own model. Now, the TSP model is not biblically responsible. The reason that it's on our site is because sometimes that is the only option that government employees have. If you're in the military, if you work for the government, and that's a lot of people these days, you're in a TSP plan, and that's really your only choice with that money. So we give you some practical asset allocation guidance, but you do have to know that is not a biblically responsible. And it's not for everybody. It's only for people who participate in the TSP plan.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So those 2 main models, Shana, the regular investment and the Timothy model. Regular investment, more for you if you really want to do it yourself, and Timothy if you want a little more hand-holding?
Yep.
Kind of how it goes? Yeah, nice. So kind of the next question, Shana, how do we pick the right one for our specific financial situation? I know they're kind of split off of based on age. How do we know what we should consider? Is it just age, or are there other factors we should consider too?
Yeah, so it's age. There's an age range attached to each one, but it also gives you kind of an objective, whether it's growth in income, income only, so on and so forth. It's kind of paired with the ages. So the age models are based on the assumption that you will retire at age 65. So let's say that you're 45, but you plan to retire at 50. Well, though you're not in the age model of 65 to 75, you may want to look at that 65 to 75 model because you're closer to retirement. So risk is also another consideration. You should really kind of know your own risk tolerance, whether you can handle a lot of volatility in your portfolio or not a lot of volatility in your portfolio. If you can't handle a lot of volatility, you may want to look at one of the older age models.
Awesome. Love to get to another question here. I think we're coming to the end of a break.
Yep, I think we are.
We'll serve our listeners well and not squeeze an answer in.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Well, we'll pick those things up when we come back on the other side of the break. But for now, we've got to take a break. If you want to find out more about our ministry, go to financialissues.org and learn how to become a partner today. If you are a partner, make sure that you review that partner conference call that we had just last week. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more financial issues right after this.
I actually called the clinic thinking that it was an abortion clinic. I knew that at the time my partner wasn't going to be involved. I did want Suzette, but I was having financial problems. And I was like, I don't need an appointment. They're like, just come in and we'll help you. And so I went in and yeah, that practically changed my life. I had not been sleeping and I remember like being able to sleep that night because I knew that like something was gonna happen. I was able to carry Suzette full term and have her. I'm extremely happy that I did not get an abortion. I don't think I would be here today. Or my daughter. I don't think I would ever sacrifice as much as I did because I feel that I did it for her. And if it wasn't that people that supported me, I don't think I would have ever been here.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common, the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Welcome back to Financial Issues, everybody. Shana and I are talking about the asset allocation model. Hopefully, you've become familiar with it if you've become a partner recently, and I also hope that if you've been a partner for a long time, you're familiar with it as well. Shana, this next question that I kind of wanted to bring to your attention here is, should we be concerned if, and I should say when, our allocations get knocked off target than what the model suggests, because that just tends to happen with the markets. Now, sometimes it could get way knocked off depending on what stocks do. What should we do to mitigate this situation when we're heavily out of balance?
Yeah, so one is don't be alarmed because it will happen.
Yeah, okay.
You'll have things in your portfolio that do really well. You'll have some things that lag. So you'll have things that are kind of all over the place. Where you should be maybe a little bit concerned is if everything is behaving the same way, because as part of a diversified portfolio, you're going to have some things that perform better under a certain set of circumstances and different under a different set of circumstances. But if you're diversified properly, you should probably never have anything that's not everything in your portfolio should be doing well at one time, and vice versa. So one of the things that you can avoid doing is looking at it too often. So, if you don't want to get into a situation where you're micromanaging your portfolio. We're not traders, we're investors. When we make an investment in a company, we're looking to stay in it potentially forever, as long as the conditions, lend itself to that. Nothing really changes in a negative way. but you don't want to look at it too often. If you rebalance too often, there's studies that have shown that you're really hindering the performance of your portfolio. You need to give your investments some time to work and, not try to rebalance it. Don't be a Pharisee or a perfectionist when it comes to don't look at your portfolio tracker every day and try to fix it.
Yeah, it's really good. And, Shana, we'll come back to that too often question because I had a follow-up for you there. But before we get to that, this is kind of moving into both applying to new partners and long-timers also. Oftentimes we'll come to a point, it just happens with age, where we turn 66 and we're thinking, okay, now I need to move up to the next model. What should we consider when we approach the decision to change models? And I know we mentioned earlier, it's not just age. What are some other things?
Well, it could be a change in your life circumstances.
Yeah.
Maybe something happens. Maybe you become disabled. You can no longer work anymore, and it was a long time before you had actually planned to do it. But it could just be because you're getting older, you're getting closer to retirement. One of the things that I can tell you to avoid doing is don't change models because of the way that you feel. So, don't base your portfolio decisions on your emotions. Like if the market starts to, if your investments start to decline and now you're scared, well, don't change models because of that. As long as you made a good decision to pick the right model, you probably don't need to change just because the market's doing good or the market's doing bad. So one of the questions that I often ask of new clients is we're setting some expectations. We're talking about, how portfolios perform under different circumstances. And we'll usually look at, a range of behavior. And we'll say, for a portfolio like this, normal behavior is anywhere, in a bad year, you could be down 10, 15, 20% or more. In a good year, you could be up 10, 15, 20% or more, whatever's appropriate for that particular portfolio. But then I'll give the question to them. I'll pose the question, how would you feel if we're doing a portfolio of the past year's performance and I tell you that the portfolio is down 10%, 20%, or even more? What is your response going to be? Will you tell me that our strategy needs to change, that we need to be in a different asset allocation model? If it does, then you're probably not in the right model to begin with. So, make sure that you understand your risk tolerance and that you choose the right one going in. You don't want to change models. Or on the flip side of that, let's say that we're at the end of a really good year and we see that things have really increased and your portfolio maybe didn't participate as much as the market did. Or do you think that you need to add more risk in at that point?
Shana, that's really good. If it's okay with you, I'm gonna jump off our notes for just a second here because I think this is a really interesting question. I'd love to hear your feedback on. We talk often on the show about emotions driving everything. Emotions drive the markets up and down, and often when we look at the decision to change models, we're tempted to do it based on what we feel. My question for you is, why is this such a temptation in investing in general?
Well, I think too many people are led by their emotions. They see the markets move up and, they get afraid of missing out on good performance. They see the markets move down and they get afraid again that they'll lose money. So I think I may have missed part of the question. My ear pack went out.
No,
Did I get it all?
You absolutely got it all.
Okay.
It's really helpful. It just made me think, Shana, as you were talking about that, like our emotions impact everything, and often it's negative. The Bible talks about how our hearts are desperately wicked and deceitful, and so we have to guide them and lead them. And it's just a really good reminder here. You tell us all the time, whether it's looking at the markets, seeing them driven by emotion, or looking at our own asset allocation models and making wise decisions not based on emotions. It's a great reminder to lead and guide our hearts that can be so easily deceived.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Last question for you, Shana. I know I said we'd jump back to that, looking at our portfolio too often. How often is too often? How often should we check our portfolio and rebalance and try to get back into that proper target with each of those pizza slices, as I call them?
Yeah. So less if you're using the mutual fund ETF strategy because you have professional management on it. I'd say maybe 1 to 2 times. But if you're doing the individual holding strategy where you're building your own portfolio, 2 to 4 times a year is probably plenty. I would say it would be a good practice just to review the portfolio every quarter. And if you're relatively within range of all of your sectors, maybe you do nothing other than just review it. But if you're severely out of whack in a certain sector, then maybe you take some action on it. But certainly not more than every 3 to 9 months.
Thank you for all that info, Shana. That's awesome. New partners, I hope you were blessed by that, and longtime partners, the same thing as well. It's good to hear that stuff. Shana, let's get to a headline here that I just came across my eyes several days ago. So the headline is this: the Treasury announces a new plan to boost affordable housing supply. This was similar to something that we mentioned briefly on Monday's show, actually. But Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Monday announced a new Treasury program administered by the SDFI fund to boost the nation's supply of affordable housing. So it's providing $100 million over the next 3 years. It includes a call to action for federal home loan banks to up their spending on housing programs and a how-to guide to support state and local governments. Chronic unaffordable housing is a key concern among some Americans who overwhelmingly expressed dissatisfaction with the economy under Biden in poll after poll. Very interesting here, Shana. What wisdom can you give us here regarding specifically government overreach and also when it comes to financial assistance?
Yeah. Well, I think I have to answer our question with a question.
Yeah.
Do you remember what happened last time the government got more involved in the housing market, say like 2006, 2007? They told
Something
lenders
bad happened in 2008, right? I think,
yeah.
Right.
It started in 07, actually.
Yeah.
They told lenders that they had to loosen their lending requirements so that people with lower credit scores could qualify for mortgages, that they should lower the amount of money that people have to put down. They have to increase lending in underprivileged parts of society. So government got involved and said, you really have to be, throw all of that financial wisdom out of the window. Don't really worry about what their credit score says and things like that. Well, you know what happened? Abandoning the idea that a person is more likely not to repay what they owe if their credit score is lower and their debt to income ratios don't really matter, turned out to be a really wrong decision. And, the financial crisis ensued after that. My opinion is that government needs to get out and stay out of the private market. The government really, and, in institutions of higher learning, they're really being taught the Keynesian way of economics, that the government is responsible for everything. The government needs to create jobs. The government needs to invest in private industry so that we can onshore production of goods and services in this country. And everything that the government touches doesn't turn out so good.
Yeah.
The government really has a way of ruining things, and so the government needs to get out and stay out. They need to be teaching Milton Friedman in economics classes, not Keynes.
Yeah, absolutely. And with all due respect to our ruling oligarchs on YouTube who will probably cut us after this segment, Shana, it really is true. It reminded me of just the fact, I love what you said, everything government touches seems to go southward. We're not saying that it's bad for people to help people. We want people to be helped. But it's not the government's job to do that. It's individuals' jobs to do that. It's organizational jobs to do that. It's not the government's job. That's exactly. It's the church's job. That's it's really good. Amen.
Yeah, the government doesn't do it well because their motivation is not right. Typically, their motivation is that they want to get reelected and that they want to keep their job, and so they, offer as many benefits as they can to people who would vote for them.
Yep. It's well said there, Shana. That's good stuff. Let's get to a question here, if we have time for it. Brandon, 23 years old, asking a good one here, saying, would you mind explaining more what bonds really are and how they work? I've heard that bond rates tend to be higher when interest rates are low, but I've also heard they have higher rates when stocks aren't as strong. It feels like a conflict, even though I'm sure it probably isn't. Could you help Brandon there, Shana, with some advice?
Yeah, Brandon's 23, so he probably doesn't really need a big exposure to bonds, but it's a good thing that he's wanting to learn what they are. So bonds are debt instruments. When a company, a publicly traded company, or a government or a municipality wants to borrow money, they will typically issue bonds. And bonds are, like I said, debt instruments. So if you're buying a bond, you're basically lending your money to whatever entity it is, and they're going to use that money for whatever purposes they say they're going to use it for. They're going to pay you a fixed rate of interest based on the original purchase price, and then at the end of the term, at the end of the maturity, you're going to get your original investment back. In the meantime, you're going to get all of those interest payments. So you can sell bonds on the secondary market, and that's what he's referring to there, is when interest rates move higher, the amount of income that a bond generates doesn't change. So to make that instrument marketable, the price has to either move up or down, and that impacts the yield to make it equivalent to whatever the current market is. So great question, Brandon. We thank you for that. Well, folks, if you're listening to an outlet that only carries the short version of the show, we bid you a farewell today. But for the rest of you, we're going to come back with more financial issues. We hope that you'll stick with us, and we're going to hear from Joel Noble with Samaritan Ministries about how you can be a good steward with your health. Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
Here at FISM News, our mission is to provide you with news from a source you can trust.
The news is a constant reminder that this world is not our home. It is marred by sin, resulting in wars, brokenness, and divisiveness.
Jesus promised that he will return soon to judge sin and make all things new.
Until then, we place our hope in him.
This is the good news, the most important truth we feel compelled to share.
In a world where financial decisions can feel overwhelming, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. But what if there is a way to align your financial goals with your deepest values? And Financial Issues has helped us navigate the complex world of finance through a biblical lens. By prioritizing and investing in a way that honors God, Financial Issues has empowered us to focus on what truly matters: our family, our faith, and our future. With Financial Issues by our side, we can invest knowing that our financial decisions are in line with our values. Take the first step today and become a Financial Issues partner to access rich online resources, training tools, and guidance for biblically responsible investing. Head over to financialissues.org and learn how to invest your money in a way that honors God. That's financialissues.org.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for hanging with us today. Well, our scripture of the day encourages us to get wisdom. So, one of the best ways to get wisdom is to read the Word of God, but also to look at what good, godly examples are doing. So, we have some very practical wisdom to share with you today in regards to how you pay for and handle your personal health care. So we have here at the ministry, we use an alternative to traditional insurance when it comes to covering our employees for our health care needs. And we use health sharing, and we specifically use Samaritan Ministries. So we want to introduce you to Joel Noble today. He is the Director of Public Policy at Samaritan Ministries, and he's going to share with us some good wisdom when it comes to how we meet our healthcare needs. Well, welcome back, Joel. Give us an update, as you always do, on the public policy fights that Samaritan Ministries is currently engaged in. What do we need to know here?
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here. So probably the latest news is one of the things we work on in the public policy realm is what we call safe harbors. And it's clarifying in state codes, in the insurance code, that we're actually not insurance and that we're not subject to the insurance code. And what that helps us do is there's often well-meaning insurance regulators that try to help us meet the same standard as insurance. And if we were trying to do that, it would really somewhat destroy the ministerial nature of what we do. So we have 33 states that have those safe harbors, and we're working on our 34th in the state of Ohio. So that's where we're at now. They're getting ready to take their summer break to help open up some time for them to run for re-election. They do that every 2 years when there's an election cycle. So we're just trying to get, hopefully get that heard in the next couple days before they break for their summer recess.
Right. Well, we have a whole new audience now. We've launched onto the NRB platform. So for those maybe joining us or maybe hearing about Health Sharing Ministries for the first time, could you give an example of, or could you tell us exactly what a Health Sharing Ministry is, real quick, and how it works?
Yeah. So healthcare sharing, like Samaritan, is a biblical non-insurance approach to healthcare. So it's member-to-member sharing of medical needs. And so I just use my own family as a great example. I have 4 boys, and so when each of those were born, I just turned in those bills, a lot of them ahead of time, for a contract with my wife's doctor or a contract with the hospital for the maternity. And then the ministry, Samaritan, assigned other members to send to me. And I received checks in the mail, sometimes electronic transfers, and I use that to pay those medical bills that had occurred. And then every month I'm assigned somebody, and I send them either a check or electronic transfer, send them a note of encouragement that I'm praying for whatever their need is, and then they get my check along with many other members' checks to pay their medical needs.
Sounds pretty biblical.
Yes. Yeah. Acts 2, it's kind of where it comes from. And then second chapter of Philippians, where it talks about not looking out for your own interest, but the interest of others. Couple scriptures there.
That's great. That's great. Well, yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And we know that most health insurers do pay for abortions, often under pressure from governments. So how are pro-life Americans able to escape the health insurance trap through Samaritans?
Yeah. One of the great things about Samaritan is you're in control of your healthcare dollars. You know exactly every month when you're sending that check or making that transfer where your money's going. And that money's never going towards abortion or the ending of life. And like you said, a number of states require that. Actually, 6 states require it within every insurance policy. So Washington, Oregon, California, Illinois, New York, and Maine. So if you live in those states, with very, very rare exceptions, your money in your insurance premiums are going towards abortion. And so a lot of us try to avoid things. You know, there's businesses we don't, go to because we don't agree with their politics or their stance or where their money's going. And then often we don't realize that at the same time, when we have insurance, that we're putting that money into a pool that then gets turned around and sent to pay for abortions.
I know I'd be very upset if I knew that some of my healthcare dollars were being sent to pay for abortions. And here at the ministry, we call that defunding darkness when it comes to the way that we invest. And now we're giving you a very, very practical way that you can defund darkness in the way that you pay for healthcare. Well, not only are you not going to be paying for abortions if you're using Samaritans, but how does Samaritans support the sanctity of human life?
Yeah, absolutely. So we allow the members to be in complete control of their healthcare dollars. So they're making decisions that work best for their family. And so they're going to doctors, they're looking at providers that work best for them. And so it's not the insurance company and it's not the employer that's in complete control. So we see that as a way that, they have control of their own life. And additionally, we're also, helping them understand that we're just one way that, God uses to meet these needs, and that, we're encouraging them that ultimately, God's the ultimate provider to take care of these needs, and that, they'll take care of it. And our newsletter every month is helping them, have healthy lifestyles. We're putting articles in there to help them, to live a more healthy life in addition to that.
Well, let me throw you a little bit of a curveball here. What do you suspect would happen if a Samaritan member called in to Samaritans and said that they were considering abortion, wondering maybe if, if Samaritans would help pay for any of that? How do you think that conversation would go?
Yeah. So our folks on the phone are amazing. And we have a whole team of chaplains also for calls like that, that deal with members that are going through not only an issue like that, but maybe a health crisis to where they're, very terrified at the outcome of that. Or maybe they have, a child or, an older child, a teen that's going through a struggle, to be able to pray for them. And ultimately, we don't want to be a replacement for the local church. So our members, when they sign up and when they renew every year, they're having a person of accountability or a pastor sign off. So in a case like that, while we'd be counseling them, we would also be reaching out to the local church and someone that's actually on the ground with them to let them know the struggle this member is going through, and to help that local church or that local elder meet that need locally.
Oh, that's great. Well, here on our show, we often talk about hedges of protection. Tell us about the hedges of protection that Samaritan Ministry offers, not only in terms of health care, but also in terms of finances and freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I've said a couple times, since they're in complete control, it allows them to have that freedom to see any provider that they want to. And so they can use their healthcare dollars most effectively for them and their family. And in addition, there's a lot of freedom for them to be able to know that there's help out there. One of the big problems people are finding with insurance now is they find a premium that is affordable monthly, but then its deductible is so high that it actually ends up being unusable. And so we try to keep what we call our initial unshareable low, so that the member, has some personal responsibility. They have some skin in the game, but we don't want it to be unaffordable either, to where it's not useful to them when the time comes when they need it and they're looking for their other members to help them.
So how would somebody find out how much it would cost them to participate in Samaritans?
So SamaritanMinistries.org, best place to start. The guidelines are there. Look through that. There's also a cost calculator, and you can put in whether you're a single, couple, a family, and your age, and then you get a idea of what works for you. We have 2 different programs. We have what's called our classic program, and then basic. And really the big difference is between those is what we call the initial unshareable. So the amount of responsibility you're going to take before you ask the other members to help with that. Great cost calculator there. If you don't find what you're looking for there, there's a number. And again, not only is our member service department great, our member development department that helps answer those questions for the members that are, or the people that are looking to be members. Great folks on the phone there too.
Great. Well, we're running out of time. Thanks so much for being here with us today, Joel. And I will say this, some people are concerned about pre-existing conditions, but you guys have a great team, so people can call in if you have some pre-existing conditions. It doesn't necessarily mean that that Samaritans is not an option. I would encourage you to call them today and find out how to be a good steward in your health care. Well, folks, I hear the music. We've got to take a break, but we hope that you'll stick with us. We're going to come back for more financial issues right after this.
When it comes to money, I always have so many questions. I never know where to go to get answers to those questions. They never really teach you this stuff in school, like some of the best ways to handle it, how to save, when to invest, where to invest, even just what to do with the money. And if I put it in the stock market, what's the best way to protect from losing it all? That fear can be paralyzing. You don't really know what decisions to make. As a Christian, I don't want to give my money to people who are going to use it for things that God hates. When I discovered financial issues, it was like a burden was lifted off my shoulders. Not only did I gain access to a simple investment strategy that I can manage myself, I also have the peace of mind that my money will not be going to companies that actively promote things that God hates. Financial issues has allowed me to experience peace in my investments.
Invest your money in a God-honoring way. Go to financialissues.org.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to Financial Issues. Great to be here with you today. I'm enjoying our program so far. Hope you are as well. Hey, I want to remind you, folks, you really have to join the Financial Issues live chat. If you don't, it's a wonderful place. There's often comedy there, as there is today, but also prayer requests, encouragement for one another. And, of course, you can put up questions there as well if you want Shana or myself to address these. We'd love for you to join us on that. So financialissues.org/live. Between 9 and 10 a.m. every day, we're live. And the chat is especially lively today. Not just lively with interesting and humorous comments as always, but also with prayer requests. And so I just appreciate all the brothers and sisters on the chat today. There's too many to count to actually give some shout outs, but you all are there and you know who you are and you know how much we love you here at the ministry. So thank you for that. Markets yesterday, take a quick look here what they did. The tech heavy NASDAQ and the S&P 500 seemed to resume their winning ways. Thanks to another boost in NVIDIA, of course. There was a recent pullback we had a couple days. That turned course yesterday. Tech stocks enjoyed a winner. And by the end of the day, Tuesday, the Dow Jones was the only loser. It was down about 0.75%. The S&P 500 was up 2/5, and the NASDAQ was way up over a full percentage point, about 1.25%. Right now, folks, the markets are actually in positive territory. They opened about 15 minutes ago. Excuse me, I said positive. I meant negative territory. The markets are down right now. The Dow is down about 1/3, the S&P down about 1/4, and the NASDAQ about 1/5. Oil is trending downwards around $80.50 a barrel, a little bit down from its highs from the previous couple of days. U.S. 10-year Treasury yields up slightly. It was down towards the 4.2% mark. It's now up almost to 4.3%. So that's what the markets are looking like here, folks. We've got the ag report coming up here right now. Craig Haugaard giving our farmers and ranchers what they need to know. So if you're a farmer and rancher, listen up. Or if you are simply a normal average guy like me who wants to learn something new, now's a great time to do it with the ag report. Here is today's ag update with Craig Haugaard.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for June 26th. Well, improved weather outlook for the U.S. corn crop put the corn market in sell mode yesterday. Although the flooding in Minnesota, South Dakota, and Iowa is getting some media attention, the area is probably not large enough to make an impact on the overall balance sheet. And as a result, the path of least resistance remains to the downside. Yesterday's close had December corn 8 3/4 cents lower at $4.43 per bushel. Weather that improves the corn situation also improves the soybean situation. A fresh 10-day outlook that calls for cooler and wetter weather has speculators aggressively selling soybeans. When the closing bell sounded, November beans were 19 cents lower at $11.11 per bushel. The U.S. winter wheat crop is now 40% harvested, and that's well ahead of the average pace of 25% harvested on this date. We also saw the good to excellent ratings improve by 3 points over the previous week. Now, a fast harvest and improved grain conditions all point to a bigger crop, and that had the market on its heels yesterday. Minneapolis September wheat was 9 1/4 cents lower at $6.03 Kansas City dropped by 6 cents to close at $5.81 Chicago was 10 1/2 cents lower, $5.60 per bushel. Cotton futures had a short covering rally as traders responded to a forecast that calls for drier weather across Texas and portions of the southeast. At the closing bell, new crop December futures were 168 points higher, closing at 75.07. Livestock futures had a mixed performance. August live cattle were 40 cents lower, $184.42 per hundredweight. August feeder cattle were 15 cents higher, $259.05 per hundred. And we had August lean hog futures advancing by 2.5 cents, ending the day at $86.75 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures closed below their support level, and I fear that could lead to more selling pressure in the coming days. Yesterday's close had July futures down 40 points at 19.47. Well, this has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
So on the chat here, I saw a quick question come in from Cynthia. I want to address this here in reference to the interview Shana just did with Joel. How does Samaritan Ministries work with someone who has Medicare Parts A and B? Cynthia, I can't answer that for you specifically, but I can tell you this, that Samaritan Ministries does provide supplemental coverage. I think I mentioned that in the chat for you there. I would encourage you and anyone else who maybe is on Medicare to call Samaritan because they're a fantastic option if you are looking for that supplemental coverage there. If you call them, I put the phone number in the chat there, but in case you're not on the chat, it's 1-877-764-2426. Just call them. You can tell them that you found out about them from Financial Issues, of course, if you want to. But just, share your question with them. They'll be able to help you out. And, of course, at the end of that call, they'll make sure to pray for you as well, which is a pretty unique experience, to say the least. It's pretty profound, and it's very powerful. So I'd encourage you to do that, Cynthia. And anyone else in the chat who's curious as well, it's a good question. A couple of headlines here to get to, folks, before the show closes. Consumer confidence, we got this number yesterday, weakened slightly in June, dipped from 101.3 in May down to 100.4 in the month of June. Present situation index increased to 141.5. That was up from 140.8 last month. Expectations index fell to 73 in June. That was down from right around 75 in May. And the expectations index has been below 80 for several straight months now. One more headline here. There was a judge who actually halted key parts of Biden's student loan forgiveness repayment plan. You guys have heard me talk about this on the show before. I am not a fan of the repayment plan. I think it's good for people to pay the loans that they commit to pay, for them to pay them back. I don't think it's good for the government to swoop in and take care of all of it. That's giving over freedoms that shouldn't be given over. And so this is good news here. 2 federal judges blocked key parts of Biden's student debt forgiveness plan. This was on Monday. The preliminary injunctions prevent the Education Department from implementing provisions of what's called the SAVE plan. Biden admin will not be able to forgive any more debt under the plan until the cases are filed and decided in both Kansas and Missouri. More than 8 million borrowers to date are enrolled in this plan, and we're actually less than a week away from seeing their monthly repayment bills reduced by half or more prior to the rulings. Folks, I want to be understanding, of course. I'm sure these people who now will not be getting their student loans paid by the government probably are a little disappointed by that, and I understand that, absolutely. But regardless of that, it's much like, here's an example, it's much like me refusing to give my children ice cream before they eat their dinner. It's not a good thing to give out these free handouts. Absolutely not. And so I understand that completely for some of these youngsters who might be disappointed. But I think it's a really good thing when government is prevented from swooping in and saving the day. So it's an interesting headline there, and we'll keep an eye out on that as well. I'm sure this coming election will have a little bit to do with that there. We got one question we can get to before the show closes, Grant. What do we got from John in Alabama?
All right, from John, we have a question about whether a church should have debt. And I'll ask the question a little bit further. Should a church go into debt for things like building projects and whatnot?
That's a good question. John, we got this in the chat yesterday from you, brother. I appreciate it. We didn't have time to get to it yesterday. But let me first, I will give you actually here, there's a headline. Our COO, Michael Cardinal, who's a dear friend of mine, sent me this article. It's a great resource. I'd encourage you all to read it, talking about the question of churches going into debt. I just dropped it in the chat there for you. The title of the article is Should Christians Go into Debt? And it's based on a poll from Lifeway Research. So, John, my guess is what you're getting at with this question is that churches should not be in debt, considering the fact that the scriptures tell us constantly of the dangers of debt. Now, debt is not necessarily morally wrong. I want to be clear that we talk about even there are some instances of good debt, but the scripture does talk about the dangers of debt. And so I would agree with you, John, completely. I think your question's right on. I think churches need to set an example for the rest of the world to live debt-free as much as they can. Now, with that in mind, let me answer your question because I think there's some nuance to it here. The reason why some churches fall into debt is there's actually several reasons. First, churches are governed by sinful people. They're governed by sinful people, and oftentimes sinful individuals can be wooed by stuff. We get wooed by stuff all the time, even pastors, though. I've found that the temptation of bigger buildings, bigger budgets, more behinds in the seats, a flashier program, none of that stuff is morally wrong either, by the way, folks, and God can use that. But what I have found in my experience, at least, is that far too often churches prioritize those things above gospel preaching. They prioritize those things above discipleship and above preaching the word of God faithfully. And that's a problem. That's a serious problem when churches do that. The first goal of the church must always be gospel preaching, God glorifying worship, discipling its people. And if there's a big building, great. And if not, God can still use that. And what's most important needs to be most important. So I think sometimes pastors can be snared by the folly of riches as well, even also. And what ends up happening is some churches will go into debt because they want that bigger building with good intentions. They want more people to hear the gospel, but it ends up being a foolish decision. I'm not saying it always happens, but sometimes that's the case. Part of the reason, folks, why churches need to know what biblically responsible investing is. I think a lot of churches don't know, and churches need to know this. Churches need to know that part of being biblically responsible means you are being wise with your money. So first, I think it's because sinful people govern churches just like in every area. Second, I found in my experience, some pastors are not as gifted financially as they are in preaching and teaching. The pastor needs to surround himself with men who are gifted financially. Some pastors are very gifted financially. Most of them that I've found are not as much gifted in the administration side. So in order for churches to be able to function well financially, they need people who have some financial knowledge in them. And I think a lot of pastors, unfortunately, don't, and it's not their fault. They're focused on preaching and teaching and doing those other things. And I've actually, my experience in that, as in my own experience of pastoral ministry, I was the same way. And I think third, this might be the most important, is a lot of churches, John, suffer from a lack of giving. A lot of churches really do. And so maybe they have faithful stewards leading them. They have a pastor who knows theology and finance, but they just don't have the funds to be able to do it. So they have to go into debt. Good reminder for us to be generous first to our churches. A great question there, John, a complicated one. I believe churches need to avoid debt as much as they can. I also think there are some who maybe have no choice. They're doing the best they can. Hope that helps you there, brother. Good reminder for us, folks, to be generous with the money that we have. Remember, it is all His. Good to be here with you on Financial Issues, everyone. We'll do it again tomorrow, God willing. Until then, I'm Seth Udinsky, and we'll see you tomorrow for more Financial Issues. Have a great day.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has